Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Conditions in the basin have been hot and dry. The benefits of the rains that we saw in July and early August have evaporated, and water supply is very limited right now. Native Rio Grande inflow over the border from Colorado is about 30 CFS, but as you can see from this hydrograph, it dipped down below 14 earlier this week. So not getting much water from the Colorado. Native Rio Grande water is water that is surface water that flows naturally in the Rio Grande from its watershed, primarily originating from snowmelt and precipitation. Native Rio Grande water is subject to the rules of the Rio Grande Compact. The Rio Chama, the next hydrograph I have is from the Rio Chama at La Puente, which measures native Rio Grande water on the Rio Chama upstream of the reservoirs. There's currently about 20 CFS or under 20 CFS reported at that gauge. And there have been a few storms on the Chama, as you can see, but there hasn't been a tremendous amount of volume behind any of them. And so the Rio Chama Acequia Association has actually begun releasing some San Juan Chama water that it purchased from some other San Juan Chama contractors from storage. I think they're going to release it from the 10th to the 17th. So they've started to release some water from storage out of Abiquiu. And San Juan Chama water is water that is imported from the San Juan River Basin in Colorado through a Bureau of Reclamation project. And this water is not subject to the rules of the Rio Grande Compact since it originates in a different basin. The next hydrograph I have is the Otoe gauge, which is located on the main stem of the Rio Grande upstream of Cochiti Dam. And this gauge measures inflow from the main stem of the Rio Grande and flows coming in from the Rio Chama. Flows measured at Otoe today are just under 200 CFS. Otoe measures both native and San Juan Chama water. And of the measured flow at Otoe today, about 40 CFS is San Juan Chama water being released by the Bureau of Reclamation and the city of Santa Fe. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs is also releasing about 88 CFS of prior and paramount water to meet the needs of the priority lands of the 6 Middle Rio Grande pueblos. And that's just because the natural flow of the Rio Grande is just not sufficient to meet their needs right now. This morning, it was reported that approximately 40 river miles are dry in the Santa Clara Reach. That's an unusually large number of dry river miles, even for that area. Anything over 30 miles is considered pretty significant, and the last time the dry length exceeded 40 river miles in Santa Clara was in 2002. In the Isleta Reach, over 15 river miles are dry, and in the Albuquerque Reach, the river is dry from the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority outfall, which is just downstream of Rio Bravo Bridge, all the way up to about a mile upstream of the I-40 bridge. And I do think that drying is going to probably continue to grow over the coming days. And again, this is only the second time in decades that the river channel has dried in Albuquerque, the last time being in 2022. MRGCD is out of its limited San Juan Chama storage water, which was released from June 16th to July 6th. MRGCD has no ability to store native Rio Grande water this year because of Rio Grande Compact restrictions. Without storage, MRGCD is unable to supplement the little water that the basin is naturally producing. And this means that MRGCD has limited control over the extent of river channel drying the Middle Valley is experiencing, or the amount of water that's available for Middle Valley irrigators. This means that MRGC must be reliant on rain inflows to continue to meet the needs of Middle Valley irrigators, and we will divert and deliver any rain inflows that come into the Middle Valley. But without any rain inflows, farmers should anticipate extended periods between irrigation deliveries. And this is a very challenging water supply year, and I would like to acknowledge the impact that these conditions have had on Middle Valley irrigators. I do, however, think we will continue to experience these late season water shortages in future years until MRGCD is able to store native Rio Grande water once again. Looking to the forecast, temperatures are expected to be lower than they have been, but still generally above average. And there are some chances for rain in the forecast, but nothing that looks too promising as of yet. The seasonal outlook calls for most likely above average temperatures and equal chances for above or below average precipitation through October. So this concludes my report. I will encourage everyone to pray for rain, and I will also stand for questions.
Thank you, Ann. Directors, any questions? Well,
I got a couple.
Go ahead.
Thanks. That's hard information. And I know you guys have been getting a lot of calls and a lot of questions And you alluded to that it's just going to get a little bit more worse until we can get into some precipitation. Um, what other pieces of hopeful advice can we offer right now?
Chair Kelly, Director Baugh, I think that we are coordinating really extensively with our other water management agencies, and we're using the resources that we have available and we're trying to think creatively, but there's just not a lot of tools in our toolbox right now.
Mhm. And are other agencies or institutions kind of reaching out to discuss this on a broader scale with drought in mind? And what I know that at Lavender Village, that was a big topic of conversation. Everyone wanted to know where the water was, and this drought or the inability to store water was a really big topic of conversation. And I know Jason did a great podcast on that, but I just appreciate you being very transparent on a very hard thing. And I want you to know that we're trying our best to communicate a clear message. So thanks for all your good work in a hard time.
Chair Kelly, Director Baugh, thank you.
Directors, one thing that I will add, and Director Ball, I think you were hinting at some of this. The email, the phones, there's a lot of desire to talk about this topic right now. It is people don't worry about the Rio Grande drying until it dries right in front of them. And the reality that this is a phenomenon that happens on areas of this river all the time is new to folks, especially if you've moved here in the last decade. Then you've only experienced a connected river. You haven't been here long enough to go back to the previous times before it dried in Albuquerque. And so the one thing that I think that we as the organization are doing, that we continue to do in the public, and that we need to encourage the public on, is this is not new. And then this is a product of a changing hydrology. It's 100% true. It's a product of not being able to store native water, as Ms. Marken talked about, and there are reasons for that. And it is not that El Vado is broken. El Vado is broken, but we have an alternate place to store. But we as a state have to find our path forward on the Rio Grande Compact. There are significant conversations and difficult conversations with water users, both state, local, and federal water users, on how water is being used and managed. And so what I can advocate for the public is there are resources out there that are out there to explain what's happening. You mentioned the podcast. There's information on our website. We're partnering with other agencies trying to get education out there. You saw that in our video, that our future along the Rio Grande has to start by looking at least back a little bit before we look forward, and recognize the history of the river. And to recognize the infrastructure that we human beings created on this river has made it more reliable, but reliable is the key word there. It doesn't make it armor proof against it. And I will circle back to my beginning. The amount of water we're producing in our mountains from snow has diminished by almost 20%. And more, could be more if you actually go back and look at the record. And we've built our society around capturing that water. And we have to make hard choices. And we have to make them together. And it's going to get harder. I mean, if you want my professional opinion, and I know that's not you asked for hope, and I know this is not going that direction, but I need to tell the public. My job is to tell the public the truth. We're experiencing hardship, and it's going to get worse, quite frankly, and then it'll get better. But I don't think we've experienced the worst. But I feel like it's going to get harder before it gets better, and significant decisions will be made when we get there, and when we go through those tough times. So I wish I could tell you it's going to be easier going this path forward, but there are infrastructure improvements that we need. There are policy improvements there are policy changes that we need. And then there is a general education of the public on how we use water, and how we value it. That has to happen too. So I'll stand for questions on that rosy note.
Thank you, Jason.